Imagine waking before dawn in medieval Britain. There is no electric light to soften the darkness, no heating system humming quietly in the background, no insulated walls protecting you from the wind, only cold. The kind of cold that does not sit politely outside your door, but seeps through wood, straw, and bone. Winter in medieval England was not a season of comfort. It was not a painting of snow-covered cottages and glowing hearths. It was a test of endurance, measured in dwindling food stores, weakening bodies, and nights that seemed longer than hope itself. Across villages from Yorkshire to Kent, families entered winter with a single question lingering unspoken. Would everyone still be alive when spring returned? Tonight, we step into that world, a world where survival was uncertain, and warmth was a privilege few truly possessed. The house that could not keep you warm. For most people in medieval Britain, home offered little protection from winter. Peasant houses were typically constructed using timber frames packed with wattle and daub, a mixture of mud, straw, and animal dung. The roof was thatched. The floor was often compacted earth. There was no foundation in the modern sense, no sealed windows, often no glass at all, only wooden shutters or oiled cloth stretched across openings. When the wind blew, the house breathed with it. Smoke from the hearth filled the interior before slowly escaping through a hole in the roof. Chimneys became common much later. Until then, the air inside was thick with soot and moisture. Even in towns, where some wealthier merchants used stone construction, insulation was minimal. Stone held cold as effectively as it held strength. At night, families slept close together, sometimes sharing a single bed. Body heat was not merely comfort, it was survival strategy. But even pressed together beneath woolen blankets, the cold remained. It waited in the walls, it lingered in the floor, it settled in the lungs. Britain's winter was wet, and that made it worse. What made winter in Britain especially punishing was not only temperature, but dampness. The island climate ensured frequent rain, mist, sleet, and thick fog. Even when snow fell, it often turned to slush. Clothing rarely dried completely. Cloaks absorbed moisture. Wool stockings remained clammy for days. Bedding, stuffed with straw, trapped damp air. Persistent damp exposure led to chronic respiratory conditions. Pneumonia was common. Tuberculosis circulated quietly in many communities. Joint pain and inflammation plagued older villagers. Medical knowledge was limited. Treatments relied on herbal remedies, bloodletting, or prayer. A persistent cough might last weeks. A fever could escalate overnight. In a world without antibiotics, winter illnesses were not inconveniences. They were threats. Firewood, the line between life and death. Fire was everything. Without fire, there was no warmth, no hot food, no light after sunset. But fuel was not guaranteed. Following the Norman conquest, vast areas of woodland were claimed by the crown or powerful lords. Forest laws restricted access to timber. Peasants could not simply cut down trees freely. They collected fallen branches, dead wood, peat in certain regions, and sometimes dried animal dung. By midwinter, supplies ran low. Families rationed fuel carefully. Fires were kept small. Embers were preserved overnight under ash so they could be revived in the morning. If your fire died completely, relighting it was not simple. Borrowing flame from a neighbor might be necessary, assuming they still had one. Imagine January without flame. The cold would not merely discomfort you, it would weaken you. Hunger in the lean months. Winter was known as the lean season. By late winter, particularly February and early March, food stores were dangerously low. Grain harvested in autumn had to last until the next cycle. Bread became darker, coarser. In desperate times, flour was stretched with peas, beans, or inferior grains. Salted meat, if available, was rationed carefully. Fresh vegetables were rare. Cabbage, onions, and dried legumes formed the backbone of survival diets. During catastrophic periods like the Great Famine, relentless rain destroyed crops for consecutive years. Grain prices soared. Starvation spread across England and much of Northern Europe. Chronic malnutrition weakened immune systems. A body already underfed could not resist disease effectively. Hunger sharpened tempers. It strained families. It altered social order. Winter was not simply endured, it consumed. Clothing, layers, against the inevitable. Medieval clothing relied heavily on wool, one of the few fabrics capable of retaining warmth when damp. Peasants wore tunics, cloaks, hose, and simple leather shoes. Wealthier individuals layered linen beneath wool for added comfort. But garments were few. Most families owned only 1 or 2 sets of winter clothing. If soaked, drying them indoors was slow and unreliable. Leather footwear absorbed water easily. Feet remained wet for hours. Frostbite and chilblains were common in prolonged cold spells. There were no waterproof materials, no synthetic insulation, only fabric crafted by hand, and hope that it would be enough. Illness behind closed doors. Winter forced people indoors. Homes were small. Ventilation was poor. Smoke irritated lungs already vulnerable to infection. Illness spread easily in close quarters. Long before the devastation of the Black Death, seasonal diseases claimed countless lives annually. Children were especially vulnerable. The elderly rarely survived repeated harsh winters. Medical practitioners, where available, operated under humoral theory. Disease was thought to arise from imbalanced bodily fluids. Treatments often worsened weakness. A simple fever could end a life within days, and burial in frozen ground was no easy task. The psychological weight of darkness. Beyond the physical hardship lay something quieter: darkness. In midwinter, daylight lasted only a few short hours. Work slowed, social activity decreased. Travel became dangerous. Candles were expensive. Tallow produced dim, smoky light. After sunset, most households retreated into semi-darkness. Stories were told. Prayers whispered. Silence lingered. Anxiety over dwindling food supplies hovered constantly. There was no concept of seasonal affective disorder. Yet the emotional toll was real. Winter narrowed the world. It reduced life to endurance. Animals indoors, survival intertwined livestock, represented wealth and survival. Cows provided milk, chickens eggs, pigs future meat. But feeding animals during winter was difficult. Fodder stocks ran low. In colder regions, animals were sometimes brought inside or housed close to human dwellings to share warmth. This created sanitation challenges. Disease transmission increased. Yet losing livestock was catastrophic. A dead cow in February could mean hunger in April. Every decision was a calculation between risk and necessity, inequality in the cold. Not all experienced winter equally. Nobility and wealthy landowners lived in larger stone manors or castles. These structures were still cold, but they had larger hearths, servants to maintain fires, and more reliable food stores. Tapestries lined walls, reducing drafts. Fur-lined garments offered better insulation. Meanwhile, peasants endured with minimal resources. Winter exposed hierarchy starkly. Cold touched everyone. But comfort was reserved for the few. When spring finally came by late March, those who survived were often thinner, weaker, exhausted. Records from various parishes indicate seasonal spikes in burials near winter's end. spring did not arrive with celebration alone, but with relief. Fresh milk returned, new planting began, days lengthened. To survive winter in medieval Britain was not routine, it was an achievement. In Ceramento, we often romanticize the Middle Ages, stone castles in snow, candlelit halls, quiet villages beneath starlit skies. But winter in medieval Britain was not romantic. It was relentless. It tested bodies, families, and entire communities. Tonight, you sleep in warmth. Your walls are sealed. Your food is certain. In the 14th century, none of that was guaranteed. If you wish to explore more realities of medieval Britain, the famine years, the plague, the daily life history rarely shows, subscribe. There is far more to uncover, and much of it is darker than winter.